August 18th, 1973. News of a bizarre chainsaw-wielding family, reports which were to ignite the world's imagination, began to filter out of Central Texas.
All right, I'd like to welcome you guys to the Scream Factory restored director's cut of Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. My name's Phil Nobile Jr., and I'm joined here today by Joe Stevens, who plays W.E. Slaughter in the film. I'm joined here by Brian Huberman, who documented the filming of the film back in 1994. And I'm joined here by a gracious but somewhat reluctant Kim Henkel, the writer and director of this film. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great. Been a bit under the weather, so if my voice sounds a little weird, that's the reason.
How are you, Joe?
I'm fine, thank you. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. So I want to talk about the creation of the film and how we got there. And this is a film that's been tragically underseen over the years because it was very hastily recut. And the film actually opens, this film opens with a scene, an important bit of backstory from Renee Zellweger that was cut from the film. You want to talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, the opening scene is a scene with Renee Zellweger and her stepfather, who is bullying. What would I call him? Is he a molester?
Yeah, he wants to molest her.
He wants to molest her. Yeah, right. He's the stepfather, and it's the classic thing. It's a little bit of Lolita. He's engaged with the mother, but is after the daughter kind of thing. But it's just briefly touched upon. We see the horror of her home life is the point.
Right. And as you and I were talking earlier, stories have come out since then of women who were imprisoned and captured by serial killers who cite an abusive home life as giving them the tools to be able to navigate those scenarios and escape with their lives. And I don't know, I just think it's important to note that this is the first time you see it in a film, really, where you see a woman who's suffering an abusive home life sort of use that skill set in a way that comes to save her life. And I'm here to tell you that it happened in real life. I talked to real victims who have gone through that, and I just think it amplifies the shame of cutting the scene because it's a really prescient scene that you thought to include.
Well, I wonder, the way they recut it, if you even understand the story, if essentially what is going on in this tale is not basically missing as a result of that cutting.
Yeah. So her motivation, her whole, why she's acting and dressing the way she is sort of all lost.
Yeah, exactly.
And now it's back.
So we don't see her emerging from the shadow of that, and the strength emerging to deal with the Chainsaw Clan.
Yeah, you've sort of cut the arc off at the knees when you lose this scene.
Yeah,
and it's a pretty good bit of acting. I think it's worth noting also that this is maybe the most well-cast Chainsaw film with some of the best performances in the franchise. I think people lose sight of that.
Well, I would certainly agree, and I think Joe Stevens here is a major part of that. He was wonderful as W.E. Really, extremely creative. But yes, exactly. I mean, what B horror film has Matthew McConaughey, Renee Zellweger, Joe Stevens as a lineup? That's pretty good.
It's really something, and the teens are written in a very sort of post Heathers way. I think they're very arch, and they're not the sort of naturalistic ones that we might have seen in the original film with Sally Hardesty and her brother. There's a very pointed characterization to these teens. I'm always curious when directors revisit material, because is that a conscious zig where you might have zagged in '74? Is that something on your mind when you're revisiting stuff, or is this just where you were in '94?
I don't know the answer to that question, to tell you the truth.
She's doing it again.
I think I have a tendency to create more archetypes than I do characters.
Mm-hmm.
So these represent certain kinds of things that we see in teenagers and maybe the individual gets lost a little bit.
Like this one, for example. This is almost a Twin Peaks moment with this performance. What's happening here? Tell me about this actress, this choice.
God, I can't remember the story of this. We were having fun with it, and God Almighty, what was that deal? Somebody wanted to do something, and I told them if they wanted to do that, then they had to do this. But I can't remember exactly what it was.
Bit of creative bargaining on set that resulted in a peculiar moment.
Yeah, but it was fun.
Joe, we're going to be a little while before we get to your scenes, but tell me about where you were in 1994 that you came to be part of the Chainsaw Clan.
I think my agent sent me to read for Kim, and we met. I read. We hit it off immediately, and it was, it wasn't. Yeah, he offered me the part. I don't know if it was on the spot, but it was soon after, and it was fun. I'll say this about it. It was a lot of fun to shoot. It was kind of like a summer camp, and we shot it in summer in Austin. And if you've ever spent a summer in Austin, you know what the heat is like. And what made this cool is it was shot, except for a week or so at the end, all at night. And so we'd go home, and we'd meet early, right before dusk, and everybody would start getting ready, and we'd prep, and the camera crew setting up, and whoever needed to was taking notes, prepping with Kim, and by the time it got dark, we started shooting, and then we'd cut when it started getting light. All right, so then we would go into town. So we missed the hot part of the day, is what I'm saying. And I remember for me, I had my windows foiled. I'd go home, we'd go eat breakfast. I remember like 2 or 3 times with Matthew. We'd go into town. We'd still have our makeup dripping and etc. And we went to El Inocente's, a little Mexican restaurant on East First, I believe it was, and we'd get our megas, and I think 75-cent Schlitz beer back then. And so we'd be with our megas and our beer, and people would be coming in, getting ready to go to work, and here we were, and we looked like, what in the hell? They'd been up all night, no question about that. But what were they doing? They got this makeup and stuff on. But anyway, it was fun, and we all sort of, the cast, it was a well-bonded cast. Everybody got to know each other, and we really all got along and had a great time. Say that about it.
I feel like night shoots would create a peculiar, specific energy, and you had your share of them on the original film, obviously. But this feels almost exclusively at night, as Joe was saying.
Yeah,
How did that affect your process?
It was exhausting. I was just wiped out because I was, working day and night. So, basically 20-hour days the whole time, and it was just, for me, just grueling. But those nights were a blessing. We made a terrible mistake. I think the week we had a transition from nights to days, and we decided we're going to go out on a river rafting run. So, how many of us? I mean, you, Matthew, Renee.
Oh, there was practically the entire crew. Practically the entire, and Matthew engineered that.
Right.
That was his idea. He said, "Well, we've got to transition, so let's just stay up, and we'll all go down to, it was this Guadalupe River, right?
I suppose.
Yeah, and we rented tubes, and so we were tubing all day, and the heat, and we had been up all night, and it was pretty crazy. But nearly 100% of the cast and crew went because Matthew sort of, in his very nice way, insisted that. For instance, I was like, I don't know about that, Matthew. And he's like, oh, come on, Joe, it's not going to be the same without you.
Just a very charismatic, convincing kind of fella.
Yes, yeah.
That's great. Talk to me about the casting process, about finding McConaughey and finding Renee.
Renee, you know, things were pretty casual in those days with the agencies here, and they'd just send me books of people and stuff, and I'd pick out people that possibility. I think I picked Renee out of a picture, and when she came in and read, that was it. You know, it was done. And you know, Matthew was around, and he kept coming by, and I was talking to him about doing a little piece because his plan was to go out to L.A. At some point, he approached me and said, well, listen, how about if I read for the Vilmer role? And I said, oh, that'd be great. You know, I didn't know he was going to be available to do that. And we were officing out of a little old frame house on 10th and Oasis. And it was the summer, and, you know, there was a little air conditioning there, but not a lot. So we had these big casement windows opened, you know, to the outside, and people were sitting in the windows during this process, you know, but it was like, you know, people were bailing out the windows when he was performing, and we just brought a menace to the process that was undeniable.
Do you have a flashlight? Is somebody gonna come with me?
Tell me about this gal here. Nope, sorry, not Renee, but the other prom queen here.
Lisa?
Lisa.
Yeah, I thought she was a jewel, just a really wonderful person. And you know, this is really the first kind of major thing she had ever attempted. And she was terrified, and I thought she did a wonderful job.
She was great, and she was so much fun to work with.
Yeah. Yes, a real sweetheart, just a wonderful person.
And then you've got Tyler Cohn here as
Yeah, he was terrific. He was perfect, absolutely spot on for that character, I thought. He reached out to me recently. I'm terrible about responding. I'm not sure what he's doing now, but he's around and about. I need to reconnect with him.
you have a particular hatred of this character. It feels like because he's presented in such an unsavory, unsympathetic light. He literally at one point says, "Someone please kill me." And I started to wonder about, like, I think you put these teens through a different kind of ringer than in the original film. You know, Lisa ends up on a meat hook, but with a mirror across from it, so she can stare at herself on the meat hook. Then she gets hit with a stick, and then she gets set on fire, and then she gets her head stomped in. What's going on with these teens, Kim?
Oh, it's just me. I'm misogynistic, you know, a sadist or something. I don't know. I mean,
The black humor is certainly more at the forefront of this one. If anybody missed it in the original, it's front and center here in a way.
yeah.
In a way that's almost
We were just having fun.
gleeful.
The answering machine. Don't you worry, he'll pick up. Vilmer, if you're there, babe, pick up the phone.
Is this Toni Perinsky?
Yeah.
She is amazing. I feel like this is an unsung great performance in horror. She cracks me up. Tell me about her.
Toni had been around Austin acting, working for many years. In fact, she was a well-known teacher here, acting teacher as well. So, you know, in terms of what we wanted for this thing, she was just spot on appearance-wise, you know, and she brought it to the table. She was perfect for it.
And it's such an interesting arc that she has, where she's just, she's a little off here, and then we get, like, she goes to a whole nother place by the end. But she's just got that crazy eye in the beginning, and I just love this whole performance. It's really something. Brian, I want you to join in with us because you were here documenting the making of this film, and you made a pretty interesting little documentary. It's a 1 hour doc about the making of the film, and I'm curious, as a documentarian, what you saw happening on this set at the time that you thought was so worth capturing.
Right. Well, first of all, why was I even on the set? I first met Kim 10 years before when we were both working on a great film called Last Night at the Alamo, an Eagle Pennell film. And so that I made a connection with Kim then, although I don't think we were great friends, were we? You didn't care for my camera work too much.
What made you think that?
Because you told me.
That'll do it.
And
I think you're wrong about that, Brian.
Okay,
I very much liked your camera work on
I distinctly remember kind of you were much more critical then. You've become older and kind of gentler.
I see.
People today wouldn't recognize the Kim Hinkle of 1982.
I think I'm much more cantankerous now.
But anyway, so I had maintained connection when I heard he was, and of course we always knew that he was the originator of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You know, the writer of the original, and that looms large in the imaginations of
It does.
certainly filmmakers. And so when I discovered that he was planning to make another version of it, well, then I kind of just jumped and requested permission to be on the set with my equipment. I didn't ask for any kind of support. You know, I wasn't formally hired. I just got access.
It wasn't behind the scenes that's typical of today. That wasn't the approach.
It's very uncensored.
It was a great experience. I suppose we get a lot of film material of films being made, so it's not a secret any longer. But so much of these behind-the-scenes pieces are what I would call fluff or puff pieces, which are, I guess, paid for by the studio to fluff the film so that people will go and see them. I mean, tiresome extras on Blu-rays and DVDs that one goes through at fast speed. Well, you know, what I wanted to do was, instead of making a fluff piece, is actually apply the strategies of observational filmmaking.
Sure.
And which I do, you know, and so that's what I did. And what stood out to me, if you're asking me today, in an action horror film like that, is the work of the stunt people.
Mm-hmm. We're about to see some of that right now, and this gentleman's about to get run over by this truck.
Right. I mean, it's. I mean, they are, in my feeling, they are the aristocrats of the film set, and they are people apart, because actors may be acting, but these people are actually doing something for real.
Right.
I mean, that woman, Jody Hazelbart, is actually jumping off the roof of a 3-story building.
Yep.
Now, admittedly, you know, she's clipped to a wire, and you know there are certain safety devices in place. But I mean, so what? You know. So what? You know, if one were to fall, it would still be a terrible experience, even with the wires on it. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I mean, it was a great opportunity to be able to just lock on, and you know, I could go wherever I wanted.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. I don't know. Was that a mistake, Kim, or maybe you were just all so stressed out you just didn't notice me, kind of poking around? No.
Sorry I can't give you all a ride. That wrecker will be long before you know it.
Thanks for calling for us.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, hey, don't you worry about that old boy that drives the wrecker. He talks tough, but you just tell him how the cows eat the cabbage and you won't have any trouble.
I have a question. Is the gas station across from her real estate, is that meant to be the gas station from the original? I feel like some of the signage is similar.
No.
We see you, you old fart.
It
Who
looks
is
so
that,
similar.
Joe?
I don't know. I don't old fart.
Is that you?
I can't relate.
Is that meant to be you? Because I'm looking at the sign. I think I've seen certain frames of that thing where it does say W.E. Slaughter on it, doesn't it?
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm imagining it, maybe.
Yeah, but you did see that pickup there.
The original pickup, that's right. Very interesting. We are, in 2018, a little obsessed with continuity. And I think one of the things I see younger horror fans infuriate me with is them trying to map the continuity of these films together. Is that a concern for you at all? Is that something that you sort of pay any fealty to, or is
Continuity?
the enemy?
Well, you try to take care of it. Sometimes it, has to take second place to some other things, but you try to take care of it.
But in between installments, like when you're revisiting a franchise.
This particular one, it would be nice, but it's gone off in so many different directions that attempting to do that would be a nightmare. It's just.
When you sat down to write it, was that something that you even thought about? I need to get this actor back, or I need to recast a role, or is it just you take the premise and you're starting over?
At this time, that's kind of the approach I took. If I'd had my druthers, I'd have gone an entirely different way, but I sort of felt like we needed to do that.
Because there's some lip service in the opening credit with the narration where he says 2 minor yet apparently related incidents in between. And I was like, oh, I think Kim's like throwing a little shade at 2 and 3 here. Is no comment, I'm sure, right?
Well, I wouldn't throw shade at it.
That was a comment.
It was, wasn't it?
No, I mean, frankly, I really like Toby's sequel. It's like this. It's not a particularly scary film, but it's interesting and it's a lot of fun. And over time, I think people really appreciate it in a different way for what it is.
Yeah. And he wasn't repeating himself.
Yeah.
It's very much its own thing.
Yeah.
And I think that what people who maybe don't sit down and look at this film don't recognize is that this isn't exactly repeating yourself. This is, you're taking a template, but I think what you're saying and what you're doing in this space is so very different from the original film.
Yeah, I mean, it's taken very similar kinds of elements and structure and doing something very different in the end with it, I think.
Well, was there a shopping list in your head of like the things you wanted to dig into with this movie when you knew you were going to take this assignment, you knew you were going to make another one, and you were going to helm it? It was going to be yours, right? I mean, that was the dream, right?
No.
But did you have a list of things you did or didn't want to do, and goals that sort of you executed, and how well did you fare at
Well, my first goal was to avoid directing the thing.
So that's
if
a
at all
failure.
Possible, yes. That was
messed
my
that up.
worst failure. I really screwed that one. So after that, it didn't leave me much room. I don't know if I set down a list of goals in that sort of sense.
In writing, does the writing take you somewhere as you go?
It generally does. Hopefully, sometimes it winds up going down, too many different paths that don't work together. But story-wise, thematically, I think this came through. I mean, there's many failures in the film, but I think in terms of what I intended to get to story-wise, it's kind of there.
Mm-hmm. Smartest person in the world, but I'm not.
I have a question.
Oh, Brian,
Because
please.
what you're saying is the opposite of what you say in the documentary.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, you say you hate the writing of it, and you hate writing in general.
Well,
and that actually the directing of it, you found a lot of fun, particularly the big difference between writing and filmmaking. Just listening to you, it's clear writing is a solitary act, which you seem to be rebelling against when I interviewed you. whereas filmmaking is more of a collective act. I mean, the director may be in charge, on the set.
Sure.
But he, at the same time, the director is kind of a catalyst, just allowing the various elements that have been assembled to act together and to be their best. And you talk about actually being energized, by that experience of it's surprising to me to hear you say that, energized by kind of actually working with other people.
Well, sometimes contradictory things, do occur, because generally that's the case. I'm sort of a mole, and trying to deal with people on that scale is not exactly my forte or inclination, and I'd certainly avoid it today. But as I said, that was one of my failings. I didn't manage to avoid the whole directing role. But what you're saying about writing is entirely true. I don't see how it's contradictory. I've always found it a very difficult and painful process, and I'd rather avoid it if I can in any way do so.
I think a lot of writers feel that way.
So you don't want to write and you don't want to direct either.
Right.
Tell them we'll give them $50 if they give us a ride, okay?
$50?
You don't really give it to them. Tell them to send us a bill. If they get mad, give them $5. Tell them we'll send the rest later. It's no big deal. It's just business. My father does it all the time.
We're about to find Leatherface, and I find the and we're about to see Joe's entrance too. I find your reveal for Leatherface in this really interesting and refreshing, where so many other sequels tried to turn him into a moment, or create this boogeyman moment out of him. You create this, again, kind of a commentary on the actress, or the character rather, more than Leatherface. She's so self-absorbed in this moment that she doesn't even notice that there's a 6-foot-something, strapping homicidal maniac standing behind her for entirely too long, which I find, troubling. Joe, you're about to show up, and you have maybe the best collection of dialogue in the film.
Well, that's very interesting. The original script, there were a number of instances where Kim had me quoting from a famous novel or some kind of historical event, and as I looked at the script, I thought, well, I want to expand on that. And often before we'd shoot on a particular day, and I had a book of quotes, and I would like, Kim, I think this would work. And I always had 2 or 3 that for him to choose from.
Options.
And he would say, yeah, he loved the historical quotes the best. And he would go there, so, yeah, can you put that one in? And so we did that on a number of occasions. And he was really open and good like that. He was very, very giving director. He wasn't precious with his words at all. He was, he was.
It creates this sort of world building that it's not all coming out of one pen. It feels like it feels like there are other points of view like that. And then you say that, and it makes perfect sense when I watch it that there's other DNA happening in here. It does make me wonder though, does W.E. just read books of quotations, or is he well read?
Well, actually that character was in part inspired by a single meeting I had with Lou Perryman's father.
Yeah.
Lou Perryman.
Lou Perryman was a crew member of the original, and he played LG in Texas Chainsaw 2.
Well, they had a kind of contentious relationship, and the one time I saw them together, they were arguing about this, that, and the other, and periodically Lou's father would leap to his feet and quote some historical line, generally from a military or historical kind of context.
I propose to fight it out on this line if it takes all summer. That's Ulysses S. Grant. You probably didn't know that, did you? Of course you didn't. Because you're a bona fide moron.
Joe, that was a great one.
So that too, the bona fide moron, that was just added on because it came to me in the moment.
I love it.
And so yeah, that sort of thing happened a lot with that film.
And here's Robert Jacks as Leatherface.
Heather! It's okay, she's my girlfriend.
Don't trouble yourself.
There's a choice here where Robert Jacks is screaming all the time. I also love how you bring back the multiple personality kind of thing of Leatherface. He's got once again 3 very distinct characterizations in this film.
Yeah.
And that's sort of suggested in the original, but didn't get lost in the shuffle, but got a little.
We actually had written for the original a scene where, and I think we may have shot it. I'm not absolutely certain, but I think we shot a scene with Gunnar Hansen putting on his makeup for the original.
Yep, it's a deleted scene.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. So we got it in here.
Yeah. Yeah, and how? Like, it's a whole glamour situation happening at the end of
Robert,
this film.
of course, was perfect for that.
Yeah, and he's a gentleman who passed away in 2001, I understand,
Yeah.
right? He was a musician,
Yes.
and he's got a song with Debbie Harry somewhere on this soundtrack. Is that
Yes,
correct?
he does.
And the 3 Leatherfaces in this one map to the original in a lot of ways. He's sort of got that getting business done outfit here, and then he's the granny sort of situation, and then he's the lovely lady at the end.
Mm-hmm.
If I go in there, that's kidnapping. My father's a lawyer, I know what I'm talking about, okay?
Among other evils that being unarmed brings you, it causes you to be despised. That's Niccolo Machiavelli. Now get!
Okay. I need to use your bathroom anyway.
You're mad, but you're not the guy who messes up the doors around the house.
Shoot it.
Where's the phone? I'm calling the cops.
Boy, you are as dull as ditch water.
Yeah, right.
And I don't know if this is random coincidence, but the way this house is sort of mirrored of the original, where everything's sort of on the other side of the original, I always found curious. The porch is sort of flush left, where the other one was flush right. The stairway's on the other side.
I wish we could say we had made that as a deliberate choice, but we didn't have that opportunity.
No.
Heather?
So was this a real house? Is this a...
Yeah.
Did it have occupants?
Not at the time. They had actually used this on a couple occasions as movie sets. It was used as a set on Flesh and Bone. Is it Flesh and Bone was that film that they shot this in, Flesh and Bone?
Maybe.
That Meg Ryan thing?
Yeah.
Oh, and there's some nipples hanging on the door.
Heather? Heather, you okay? There's some crazy guy outside with a shotgun. Locked him out, though. You should have seen me.
Utter obliviousness of this character is.
That's the other, again, you write these teens in such a hateful way. They're completely self-absorbed, like not noticing, the nipple suit on the door. And he eventually is going to notice someone in the bathtub here. That might be the most traditional corpse in this house because there's some really non-traditional corpses that we're about to see in this house. There it is. Literally screaming more than his victims, though. He's distressed. And are those stretch pants? What is he wearing?
Well, we use so many doubles that you never can tell whether it's Robbie or a double. But I think it was mostly Robbie here.
Here he's multitasking, and here it comes.
Oops.
So I'm curious, is Girl on a Meat Hook something like on the checklist at the beginning? It's Chainsaw,
yeah.
we have to do that.
Yeah.
You don't need to be walking these roads alone this time of night. Why don't you get in?
Are you the one that moved the cars?
Illuminati towing, wrecking.
Yeah, it took me about 4 hours to get that truck to where it looked like it was anything but, a soccer mom vehicle, that brought it out onto the set that day. It was awful.
Well, wait a second, hang on.
Up until these two hit it big, this is also, again, I think since the original, the one filled with the most fresh faces, unknowns, you don't know what you're looking at, and that sort of lends to the, you buy into it a little better, I think. But time has turned this into something else entirely.
Yeah.
You've got
I can't see it that way, but I know it's true.
You've got two of the biggest stars in Hollywood in the film. It's got that had to have been a strange thing to have dawn on you as you went through the process on the film.
I'm trying to remember the timing on it. Did Matthew do a Time to Kill? Or
Actually, I think Matthew straight away did Angels in the Outfield.
That's right. That's right.
That was his next movie.
Okay.
That was his. I remember talking to him on the phone when he was doing his trailer set, and so I knew it was a big set when I said ready, camera, G.
Amazing. But I guess the first impulse would have been like this, as a producer or as a person with a stake in the film. Well, this is great. They're getting to be huge. This is going to help my movie. And that's not exactly how it panned out.
No, it isn't how it panned out at all, and I don't quite understand it. Matthew and Renee have both always spoken, very fondly of their experience, and have no reluctance about acknowledging their work in the film. So I don't know what it comes out of, or who it is, or what the story is, but somebody's certainly got a mad on about some part of the process.
Yeah.
What's gonna happen to me?
You think I give a goddamn what happens to you?
Are you letting me go?
You figure it out. It's your goddamn line.
I don't understand.
Well, welcome to the real world.
I'm curious about the soundtrack here. It's You see the same couple of bands in the end credits there. Were they local bands? Were they Austin bands that you'd recruited for this?
What bands are you talking about?
The ones that we're hearing in like the ones that Vilmer's playing. And
Oh,
his stereo.
Well, they were all local bands. One of them was a band called Pariah.
Yeah.
And Renee's boyfriend at the time was one of the band members, a guitarist in the band. And she introduced us to that band and their music. And they were a good band. Had some good pieces, and we used a couple here. But we had a lot of interesting music in it, really.
Mm-hmm. And on the sound tip, you open the director's cut. She's listening to the radio, and it does sound very much like the same news announcer from the original film. Is that Wayne Bell, or is that someone else that's reading the news? It sounds like the same exact person from the original film.
I think it's Levy Isaacs, isn't it?
I don't remember.
Yeah. Leslie Isaacs did the sound on the original, the radio announcements.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he did them for me here, too.
Is he not the DP of this film?
Yes. But he wasn't the DP on the original, but I knew him. We were friends, and he did the sound for us on it. I mean, he did the radio stuff.
Yeah, the news announcements.
Yeah,
It's all these sort of apocalyptic news stories that someone's reading in a monotone at the beginning.
Yeah. The news stories are all these transgressive stories that, at the time, at least, we thought they were transgressive. If you would play them today, they would just sound like the news.
Yeah, not even big stories anymore.
Mm.
In watching this, once she gets out of the water, I would have to say, but I haven't clocked it, but I am reasonably sure that Renee Zellweger is the fastest runner in any Texas Chainsaw film at all.
Hey, I always thought this girl, if she'd give up acting, she could be a world-class sprinter. She was fleet of foot.
Yeah. You see, I mean, look at that. Look at her go. There's the stereotype of the final girl sort of stumbling and tripping and falling and, running slow enough that the killer is just back there. Other face fucking up a door. Now, I love this cop. Is the family into taxidermy? What's happening here?
And all this design, that's Deborah Pastor.
Yeah.
Was she your art director?
The designer on this. And she was just phenomenal.
Yeah. This house was essentially pristine.
Yeah. I always wonder what kind of person would let someone film in their house.
Well, it's in the documentary.
Oh, the couple, the old
couple. The American Gothic couple.
And here's Jody Hazelbarth doing some stunt work for Renee Zellweger. Really going for it.
And this was extremely dangerous. It's much more dangerous than it looked. That pitch was extremely steep, and at night it was covered with a film of dew, so it was wet and slippery.
Yep.
I think there were nails in it as well.
Oh, of course.
I remember the people complaining about the nails.
Yeah.
There's a jump coming that's spectacular to me. That's in Brian's documentary. You feature that stunt quite a bit. There's a greenhouse. I know from watching Brian's documentary, you weren't happy with that greenhouse.
Oh, God. Greenhouse looked like anything but a greenhouse. I think they finally got it a little bit better, but, they were resisting it, making a greenhouse look like a greenhouse. I don't care what a greenhouse is supposed to look like clinically. What I want is...
Let's look at this. Look at this moment.
Yeah.
Now, yeah.
This stunt. Let's look at this.
This guy comes right through.
Okay, I have a real bone to pick.
Oh, yeah.
What's
Okay, the way you've cut that, the decision you made, I really do think that was the wrong decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because what actually happened was that Leatherface tripped after all the preparations made. He tripped going through the exploding greenhouse wall and fell down, but then got up immediately and carried on in the chase. Obviously, that was not your intention. That upset your kind of original vision. But, truncating it by kind of clipping it, I mean, do you really think that that's...
We have a dog. I just want people to know that that's not Kim Henkel panting like that. Nor is it Joe Stevens.
Elvis, how'd you get in here?
I'm not sure that's not correct. It might have been me panting.
Yeah.
We're gonna...
No, really, come on. I mean, I've been wanting to ask you this for years.
Yeah.
The commentary has devolved into chaos.
It's been a long time since we cut that scene, Brian.
Oh,
but
that's not a good... bullshit.
that's my preamble, goddammit. So I don't remember all the details, but I think we cut that every which way, plus Sunday.
Yeah.
And this was what worked the best.
I mean, would it really have upset the rhythm of the scene to allow him to kind of go down and get up and run? I mean, he was so fast.
It didn't work for me that way.
I think this is a real filmmaking moment. This is a filmmaking discussion.
Oh, I'm into it. I just wanted to get the dog out of the room first.
And, things happen in photography that you don't plan.
You're also Monday morning quarterbacking. Which film fans do all the time. Like they want to second guess everything a filmmaker does, but you don't know. You don't know what Kim was dealing with that particular day. You don't know
What do you mean? I was there.
You were there, but you were in the edit room. Is the question.
No. I mean, I know. That's why I'm asking him, because I think that the decision finally does not do justice. I mean, by cutting the shot to pretend that the fall didn't happen. It really kind of lessens the moment.
You're attributing a motivation for cutting that shot that wasn't there, and you're assuming that we cut it because he fell and that wasn't the plan. That's not the case. What the fact of the matter is that in cutting the scene, we used all the material we could in the best way we could, and this was the best result we felt we could get. Doesn't mean that it was the right decision. It just means that we felt that was the best given the material we had at the time.
It's hard to argue with that. Here's Joe Stevens in a cattle prod.
Where's my gun?
It is easier to resist at the beginning.
Damn, Joe.
Oh, he couldn't stand Renee. He wanted just to punish her. That's not true at all.
Not true. Not true.
Poor Renee, we did everything.
Renee was such a great sport. She really was.
Yeah, she was a trooper.
And in the original, one of the things that hit me is I started kind of dancing around and I was singing. Zappity-doo-dah, zappity-da. And then, never. we can never get the rights to that song, even though you're changing the words, they're still going to come after us. So, funny, but we can't do it.
And there's a whole level of Disney not really wanting that song out there too much more anyway. But that's a whole other thing. And Brian, I take your point, and I encourage you to jump in on other moments like that, because again, you were there, and you've got an insight that I think is valuable to exploit for this discussion. So, hey, he
just
answered
likes
you.
to give me a hard time.
He answered. All right. I have another question, and I don't know if Brian has an answer to this. You have abandoned the cannibalism angle in this film, and they're eating pizza. I find this a curious choice.
What's in the pizza?
Oh, I think the guy says. I think one of them says it's a pepperoni, and one's vegetarian.
Well, couldn't leave out a vegetarian pizza in this circumstances. We expect that they add some, ingredients once they get the pies home.
The way she makes those crazy eyes. Listen, I think I have a crush on this lady. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. She's just so cute, and she makes those eyes that are just like bright but also crazy. And this is also interesting to me because you show the clan living among the world, and how the world kind of is just not really paying enough attention to notice them.
Well, we wanted it to have a sense that world is just cheek by jowl with the world we know.
Mm-hmm. There's a Hansel and Gretel element to the first film where they just veer off the path and you don't see anyone else after a while. But these people are living in society. She's got a real estate office. She's picking up pizza at a drive-thru, flirting with the cops. I think it's and she has a sort of a basis in a real life character. Is that my understanding?
A basis in a real life character?
Or some sort of like thrill killer.
There was. Yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, Carla Faye Tucker, was an inspiration for part of her character, for sure. Yeah, Carla Faye Tucker. Do you know that story?
I think I read it once, but I'm not familiar with it.
She was Carla Faye Tucker was a woman who just never had a chance from the get-go, basically, and wound up involved in drugs and all kinds of stuff. And I think maybe she was 16 or 17 where she and the boyfriend murdered another guy.
It was a drug deal that went bad.
Drug deal that went bad.
Yeah.
And she claimed subsequent to that every time that she had hit the guy or struck the guy, she'd had an orgasm.
Stabbed
him, whatever. The idea was that, that it was sexually erotic experience.
Right. So she had something like 14 orgasms. You imagine how that went down in the courtroom.
Sounds exhausting.
Anyway, Carla Faye later turned her life around in prison and, really became an exemplary human being, but the state of Texas nevertheless felt it incumbent upon it itself to take her life. But that was some years after this. She was still in prison at the time that we did this.
Please don't hit me. Don't.
She's not a real brawler. It seems fairly ineffectual. There's not a whole lot of leverage with that stick.
You mentioned that you don't see any cannibalism in this particular version, but why are they taking the body? Why are they killing these people? What will happen to these bodies, do you think? What's the intention of the family?
Well, that's the whole third act with the Mr.
Rothman.
Mr. Rothman.
Yeah.
What does he do with them?
Quien sabe? According to him, if we believe him, it's, to produce a transcendent experience.
Right. But it doesn't necessarily involve eating them or selling them as meat.
Not necessarily, no.
There's no barbecue being made in this one?
No. No, the cannibalism is sort of not there. It's, I think it's implied but never witnessed. But you know, in the original, the same thing is true. Nobody ever mentions cannibalism. No human flesh is ever seen consumed. No cooked human parts are ever been. The only thing you see is some barbecue and some implications. It's very, very much.
Right. Well, it's the blood sucking of the thumb with Grandpa at the end, but that's not quite cannibalism.
Not
It's almost-
quite, no.
Lots of screaming.
Oh, this was a fun scene.
Yeah.
Those guys had
And I
a-
want to point out Joe's reading of a line that's about to happen too. So, you know, it's a heavy load to carry here. It's a famous line, and I think Joe does a really good job with it when it gets here.
Son of a bitch, I tell you what, I told him to let you know that I was on my way for pizzas on the way home, and he didn't tell you, and I'm sick of it.
Look what your brother did to this door.
Here it is. That's a famous line to try to make your own, and I think Joe does a pretty good job of it.
Well, I mean, that's a huge moment.
Yeah.
In
the original.
In many Chainsaw, right.
Yeah.
Kim should talk about that.
Why should I talk about that?
Because it's an important kind of part of the film.
I like that Kim doesn't think it's important.
I mean, you've got to talk about moral schizophrenia.
What he means is the door is not important, but it's what the whole thing
concern.
implies is, you know, the kind of what we used to call moral schizophrenia.
Yeah.
Basically, the whole Jekyll and Hyde aspect of it, the fact that they're simultaneously this murderous family and adopt, you know, conventional bourgeois values and other aspects of their lives. So, you know, that kind of side-by-side residence of those two kind of opposing things is a central part, I think, of, you know, the original, certainly, and this one as well.
Yeah, and then you've got Darla later saying, "You're embarrassing me in front of company." It's sort of the same, same thread.
Sure, yeah.
Now, tell me about the dynamic between these two, because like he's sticking his fingers in her mouth, and like they're both just bringing it. And,
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, and making it theirs and adding again to the script that was already there.
Yeah.
Really layering, you know, and texturing that scene in a way that a lot of actors, it wouldn't have occurred to them, and they played so well off each other while doing that. So,
There's a sense, and if you said you run a theater company, you're an acting teacher as well, right?
Right.
Joe. So, talk to me about what Matthew is doing in the scene that's not in the script, and Kim as well. Like, what did he bring that was sort of surprised you guys, or was an idea that he had that sort of like was so left field that it didn't occur to you, but.
okay, like the last scene was the fingers in the mouth. That's him. Yeah. The throwing the door at the end. That's him. I mean, just things like that just throughout. You know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, on the page, you know, the scene doesn't, you know, have these kinds of details in them. No, only you know, great actors can bring those kinds of things to the table. You can't write in all those details. So I think
Script would be forever. You know,
It'd be a longer one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, is that something that he, a professional actor, would clear with Renee Zellweger and say, "I'm going to do this," and they talk about it. He's not springing the stuff on her in the moment. Right?
Oh, a lot of it, yes.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, some maybe they talk about, but yeah, most of it's in the moment. And to her credit, she takes it on and gives back.
Absolutely.
And you know, and rolls with it. And,
Oh yeah,
you
it
know,
was
and
very
high-
much a collaboration, I would
Right.
say.
a high degree of professionalism from her and tolerance.
And they're both very young at this point, so that's sort of remarkable, right?
Both of them just barely have their degrees dry, the ink dry on the page.
Yeah. And here we get Darla giving the Illuminati backstory.
Help me. Hey, you just hush up yourself. It's just girl talk.
And you had said something in an interview recently that maybe that's true. Maybe these people are crazy and making it up.
Well, I mean, Darla, look at this character. She of the breast implants and the supposed, head implants. They're going to blow up her head on command. She's not exactly a reliable narrator.
Fair.
So, yeah, I think you definitely have to look at this as this is information comes from this particular character, so you have to read it like that, not take it as gospel, or at least that's the way I had intended it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Renee's character, plays it that way. She's not buying into that. I mean, she's not making a big point of it in that particular scene. But
Not her priority.
Right, exactly. She's.
And I liked what you'd written in an interview about how Renee gradually becomes more beautiful as the film goes on, which is something that I think you're attracting people to say that that's a problematic thing, and that what does this mean? And that there's it's an interesting choice to do for a horror heroine, usually who get more distressed looking and more disheveled and more run through the ringer. But Renee starts to glow as this film goes on.
Yeah, and that was an intentional thing. I mean, we start her off in this frumpy dress, and she can barely look up. She's got her hair in her eyes, and big
horn rimmed glasses.
Right.
Yeah.
And gradually the little frumpy things come off the dress, and the glasses get lost. But the final evolution is at the dinner table when she's literally dressed, in extreme finery by the family itself. But she's emerging. It's a bit of a, she's coming out of the chrysalis of that oppression of family, the horror of her family background, and confronting this situation and now going to emerge as a full person. It's not so much that I'm trying to make her more beautiful as to make her a more complete person, a fuller person, one that realizes herself.
Well, kind of makes you think, doesn't it? Smart girl.
Nobody moved or I'll shoot. You want my advice? Gut shoot him. Poison his insides. Otherwise it won't do no good. He's been shot before, lots of times. Run over. It don't mean spit.
Shut up, W.E.
You
Nobody
shut
asked
up.
you.
All the
You
time
know
running
you're-
your big mouth.
No, everybody shut up!
You shut up.
Okay, now get down on the floor. Everybody get on the floor and put your hands in front of you. Get down!
Okay.
You get down too.
What are you gonna do? Shoot me?
Yeah. If you try something.
What if I do this?
He looks so young, doesn't he?
He does, but again, I think it's something. There's a star power thing happening where when it's the two of them, notice how everybody in the room goes silent and we just watch it. Take your fucking pick.
I love the conflict that's going on, this whole stirring mess.
No, you stop. You get back down.
Discretion is the better part of valor.
That'd be Billy Shakespeare. So, Kim, I got to ask, have you seen a film called Killer Joe?
Killer Joe. That
Yes.
sounds familiar.
William Friedkin made it, I believe, 2010, and it stars McConaughey. And if McConaughey didn't screen this film for William Friedkin before they made that, I would be very surprised. There's a lot of what I'm seeing right here in that film with McConaughey. I reckon it's a great film, but I'm sitting in the theater in 2010 going, this is right out of the fourth Texas Chainsaw movie. He's doing something very similar, and it's very interesting. And here's Lisa. Kim is not done torturing Lisa yet.
Poor girl. We had her on the ground so long, that was her major complaint. I'm not lying on the goddamn ground. Get me out here.
Shoes. It's okay, get up. No, Heavy. No, you gotta get up. You gotta get up now. I have to get out of here. Stop
it! Pop goes the weasel.
And she almost gets out of the house. They get so involved in their own stuff.
Yep.
She's almost loose. Nope, now she's doing that thing where you fall. The car was a mistake. To what level does the heat and the night shoot, that sort of like drifting into that nocturnal existence, feed into the performances for you, Joe? Were you guys getting a little loopy? I know you said it was better because you were out of the daytime heat, but what was happening with your minds when you're doing this stuff?
Oh, I think we were all pretty fresh. We worked hard.
Yeah.
And then, end of the night, we were tired. We ate and we drank, and pretty soon after that we went to bed. And actually, I ended up sleeping, longer and better than I normally would have, just because. So
there was no unhinging quality to the schedule for you.
Toward daybreak, you're getting a little loopy, but no.
I was definitely loopy.
This was, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first feature you directed, right?
Yeah, first and last, fortunately.
Well, what was your process like, and where did you learn sort of like an approach without having quote unquote practice at it? Was it from just being on other sets and watching how other directors worked and picking and choosing?
He wrote it, so
sure.
Who would know better, what he wanted than himself? Yeah.
Yeah, you know what you want, but how to get it, I think, is sometimes the gift in directing. How to get it out of everybody involved, because as Brian said, it's such a collaborative process that.
Well, I didn't really have many concerns about the cast and the acting, because I thought I did a good job of casting, and mainly I just got out of the way, gave them room, and really my job was if it went off track a little bit to just steer it back. And there are very few times that I felt like it did in terms of the way the cast approach it. And so they pretty much had free reign, I think.
Yeah. This dress is a choice.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It didn't work quite as much as I wanted it to, but it was supposed to be like, a dress that is at the same time bondage.
Yeah.
I know. I think the best definition of a director I've heard is somebody described it as the individual who sets the temperature on the set.
Sure.
And Kim is a pretty silent kind of individual. I mean, so he's not a noisy presence as some directors I've seen, like Eagle Pennell. was drunk and loud and threatening at times. You know, Kim's quite the opposite to that. Except I do remember one thing, because it was night and it was hot. By the way, the mosquitoes. Don't you guys remember the mosquitoes? I mean, you needed a hunting license to kill them. But there were ice chests around.
Yeah.
And the idea was that, you know, when it was too much, you could get a refreshment, a drink. And I remember as I approached one of the ice chests, I was rudely informed by one of the production assistants that the Cokes were all for the director.
Oh, interesting.
And that, you know, if one kind of transgressed and took a Coke, you would be probably excommunicated. Right, Kim?
I didn't lay
That's
down
still the
those
case.
orders. I just,
Well.
you know, I basically live on the stuff. So
And it's only fair to point out that before we started recording today, Kim said, "I'm going to walk down to the corner and get some Cokes. Does anybody want anything?"
Exactly.
And that was very nice of him. So he has softened his iron fist on the Cokes, it seems
I
like.
guess.
that was not my iron fist. I'm perfectly happy to share as long as there's enough to go around.
Not true. Not true.
Let's talk about this dinner scene. I don't know where her mask ends and begins. Those lips are on there. Like, it ends at the jawline, but those lips are on there. And this is an interesting variation on the dinner scene, because you've just got, it looked like 4 or 5 reasonably fresh corpses sitting around the
Smurfs,
table.
yeah.
Smurfs.
Yeah, somehow the makeup department kept making them look like Smurfs.
Yeah, they're a little gray.
Well, that's better than blue.
Yeah. And this particular, like, we're watching the director's cut, and the sources are varying and of varying quality. But right here, you can really get a sense of, like, what a nice job was done in the set decoration and the art direction here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what I particularly liked in this room were all the keys.
Keys.
On the wall
Keys
behind
into
him.
the wall. Yeah.
That's an interesting. There's a serial killer in Philly named Gary Heidnick, and he did that with pennies in his house.
Really?
Quarters and pennies. He lined a whole wall with them, and that's.
Well, clearly
looks
the
similar to
keys
that.
represent
Someone else's.
travelers who have been captured. And,
Yep.
And what did the money, the pennies come?
We never found out. He didn't talk. It was a very strange choice. Darla's hair is looking good here. He's just spitting food on her the entire
spitting
scene. That's another one that I'm curious about as like an actor. Is like that's something gets handled beforehand. Renee, I'm going to spit on you. Like, does that come up, or does she find out when we find out?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, I think that was something that Renee and Matthew worked out there.
And this reveal is spectacular.
You don't think that he just spat at her, just there's something to do, and there was no planning.
This is W.'s Hamlet moment, we think. Like he's just talking to a skull.
My brother here is tired of what's-her-name's face, and he wants a new one. It just happens to be he wants this face right here.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes, it
Oh,
does.
me.
Yeah.
Don't touch me. Don't you ever touch me.
I recall from Brian's documentary that she really laid one on him there.
Well, of course, this is where, you know, she stands up. This is the final transformation. She's out of the, emerged from the chrysalis of oppression.
And it doesn't not work in the truncated version, but it's rhyming here. It makes sense. Like there's a beginning that we now know about, and there's a resolution that we're now privy to.
Yeah.
And oh, sorry, Joe.
Where'd that come from?
Fratricide, and then Grandpa comes back to life.
Belmer.
There he goes.
I'm gonna leave, and no one is gonna stop me. You sit the fuck down.
What kind of guy was Robert Jacks?
Oh,
Tell me about the man under that mask.
he was funny and theatrical. Just a kind of bigger than life type guy. Good Lord.
Yeah, you're not done with her yet.
Yeah. Poor thing. And then we left her in the corner to smolder for hours.
And she didn't quit acting after this film.
She didn't.
Did not.
That, of course, was Jodie
Oh, that was Jodie Habernath on fire.
Hazelbarth.
Hazelbarth. Habernath. Here he comes. Here comes Rothman.
Rothman, that was James Gale. He was otherwise occupied doing Shakespeare in the Park. He was doing Henry V
Yep.
In Houston at the time. So, therefore, his haircut.
Is that why? I was
Yes.
been wondering for 20 years why this man had this haircut.
Yes,
What a sense of
that's it.
closure I just felt now. And where did you come across this gentleman?
Gale?
Yeah.
God, where did we come across Gale? I cannot remember. He was a real find, though. He was terrific. Some Houston connection, but I don't recall specifically. Interesting guy. Loved to fish.
Huh. And this part of the film, of course, got a lot of head scratching and a lot of debate and a lot of sort of pondering about what it means and what you're trying to say. And it always strikes me as I don't know, damaging, I guess, when people want artists to provide definitive answers to something.
Yeah.
And do you hate being asked about it?
And there's no problem being asked about it. It's just, generally there are a fairly broad range of reasons why you do something, and when you start talking about it, then you have to kind of, it becomes reductive by dint of, you're not all inclusive. And you tell the story in lieu of an essay. If you wanted to write an essay, then you would go and tell about it, but instead your approach is story. So that's difficult then to sort of translate into sort of essay terms, and it's an uncomfortable process. But and that little piece that I showed you, I think there's a sense of why this is that this wanting to look to a sort of larger authority, some authority beyond the family. But I did not want it to be an easily defined or understood relationship, I guess.
Sure.
We've heard heretofore allusions to these powerful people that Vilmer works for that do all this and that, and we sort of assume this is the manifestation of that. But what does it really tell us?
Mm-hmm.
What does he really do? I mean, are we persuaded that this guy belongs to the Illuminati? Is there anything in his conduct that tends to persuade us that that's the case? Or what the hell is going on here?
Yeah. The family seems fairly intimidated by him.
Yes.
But they also seem like a group of folks that might be easily fooled or convinced of something.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously has some power, whether it's psychological or otherwise, we don't know.
Right.
But they've certainly entered into a kind of understanding of the world that is, let's say, a little beyond the pale.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy seems to offer some sort of background to that.
Yeah.
to give it a larger scope, but we don't know exactly what.
Yeah. I found it thematically an interesting deviation from the original because I think so much of the power of the original is in how nobody's driving the bus. How, like, you wake up and decide to go check on your grandpa's grave one day, and it's all south from there, and there's no rhyme or reason to the chaos. I mean, the way the solar flares at the beginning are even sort of like alluding to like a universe that is not being piloted.
Right.
And we kind of go another way here, like you said, an authority who sort of they're answering to, which I find an intriguing decision.
Well, I mean, I think he's a significantly unreliable authority, and exactly who he is, kind of is difficult to pin down. I don't know. I'm a little uncomfortable with that.
Yeah. But in the practical, is this something you have to explain to 20 people on set when you're making it? Does everybody, from the key grip to the costumer to the makeup person coming up to you and saying, well, so who is this guy? What's happening here?
No, never.
They kind of just show up and do the job.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody had a question about it, they didn't ask me, or I don't recall. Joe, did you have any issues with this or questions about this character appearing?
Gail?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, it was. It threw me. I mean, I could see. It was very enigmatic, and I could piece it together. I said, okay, there's a higher authority that the family is answering to, but who it is and why it is. Were questions that were left unanswered.
He in a way takes the place of a God figure.
Yeah.
And that was fine, and that was, I think unavoidable in the structure of the thing, but. I certainly wanted to make the God, let's say, more in the image of the way I see God. That is, not as benevolent creatures who look with kindness over their flock, but almost as tormentors.
Yeah, a little kid pulling the wings off of flies.
Right.
I think some of the frustration, or what I would imagine to be frustration for you, is that I think a lot of folks assumed that since the movie was cut up and altered and shortened, that somewhere in there was an answer about this guy. And that's got to be a frustrating question to get over and over again when you weren't responsible for those cuts, and you know that those cuts aren't really impacting the enigma in the first place. An enigma which is very much intentional. Because when we watch this cut, I mean, I know you haven't watched this film in some years.
Right.
There's, when you watch it back to back and you're watching things, there's 4 seconds pulled off of a shot here and 3 seconds pulled off there, and it seemed almost an arbitrary effort to trim 10 minutes out of a film that was already only 93.
I did not understand it at all. I was not consulted. Nobody asked me a single question. I didn't know it was occurring until post fact. So, I was not happy, but there was nothing I could do. Yeah. I just didn't see the point of it. God, this was a nightmarish situation here.
Tell me.
Well, this is out in the
running
boonies.
again. My God.
she can fly, can't she?
Yeah. It was only about 110 degrees. That ground was so hot you could not step on it barefooted. She looks maybe barefooted, but she has some, yeah. Anyway, our producer Bob Kuhn cut this road in this thing, and it was so hot and dry. It was like trying to stage this thing on a beach deep with sugary sand. It was just ridiculous. and we were all frying. It was miserable. You weren't out there for too much of that, were you, Joe?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, this was the worst. It was miserable. Now Matthew is driving this pickup truck the whole time. Yeah, I mean, it's just freaking crazy.
Because it seems like in the subsequent scene, you did not have access to Matthew McConaughey in this finale.
Oh, we did.
But the plane is coming. Is that McConaughey? I feel like it's a stunt double.
There's a stunt double in a couple of shots, but mainly
Okay.
McConaughey is there.
Now the plane. The plane's in on something? We're just trying to save the girl?
Yeah. Yeah, it's, a deliberate deus et maxima kind of...
So at the outset, when you're embarking on this film, what's creatively what did you want how did you want it to be different from the original? Was there a conscious thing that you wanted different from the original, or is it just the fact that you were, 20 years older, and things you were interested in just happened to be different and took the story there on its own? I know it's a ridiculous question to ask, but
Well, Chainsaw and the way it is regarded has evolved over time. It was very difficult to get this done. And, it wasn't as if there were a lot of people out there clamoring to put up money to do anything. And we wanted to try to, keep this thing alive. And basically, I permitted myself to be persuaded to do it. And if I had altogether my druthers, I would have probably gone a different way.
can you be specific about a different way?
Well, I thought it needed to go urban. At the time that we did it in the early 70s, Texas was still a rural state. But by this time, it had begun that transition to the urban state it is today, and the population almost tripled. So the world in which most people live here is very different. And I thought it would be interesting to bring Chainsaw into that world. Have that world encroach on the Chainsaw world and see what happened in that clash. But I didn't feel like I could do that, and so I sort of wanted to sort of put this back on track. I thought maybe would have some forward momentum, and I guess that was as much as anything what was a basis from which to go forward.
Would you like to go to the local hospital or to a police station?
This isn't the first time something like this has happened. Miss? Miss? We will find out what this is all about. This is not the end of it.
Oh, my God. Miss?
I mean, doesn't the Rothman character suggest a sort of a corporate world which kind of points in that direction into a world beyond the kind of the old rural?
Oh, yeah, I think so, very much so. It's whether you consider it, him to be a member of the Illuminati or just some crackpot, it expands the story, enlarges it, and moves it outside.
Well, I think I think because the characters think he's the Illuminati. He is the Illuminati. Clearly, that wonderful scene where she's whispering things to Jenny and suggesting that, who killed Kennedy.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and that, you talk about creating archetypes. I mean, that's the mystery of who killed JFK kind of remains a kind of a ghost lurking amongst us. Or, I mean, we're all, you pull that string and it kind of sets off a reaction you kind of, almost can't control. Of course he's the Illuminati. Of course those forces, kind of lurking out there. It's the breakthrough in this film is that we actually see them.
Yeah.
And in fact, in your subsequent work, don't you kind of really develop that idea, Bone Boys, of this kind of this much scarier, larger force that's operating on us, denying us our freedom, our individuality. I think horror films have worked on that since the end of World War II. I mean, that's been not an unusual theme.
And no pressure, but you have about 60 seconds to answer his question before we're out of movie.
What was your question?
We don't have time for him to ask it again, that's for sure.
Well, it's just, just say something about the Illuminati, about this force.
Well, I think I've said what I had to say about it, in that, for me it works two ways, because the individuals in the film can fully believe he's Illuminati. That doesn't make for the fact that he is indeed Illuminati. We can have it two ways. We can believe in the unreliability of the narrator, of the individuals who tell us who he is, or we can believe what we see.
We're probably going to have to end on that note, I think. I want to thank Brian Huberman. I want to thank Joe Stevens. And I very much want to thank Kim Henkel for coming here while feeling under the weather and sitting through a film that he was reluctant to sit through, reluctant to make. But I think it's an
Two-Headed Dog, that was great.
That's the one that
Rocky Erickson.
He licks Renee Zellweger to that song. Yes. Gentlemen, thanks very much for joining me today.
Yeah.
All right.
Enjoyed it. Thanks.